All right, guys, I'm very excited to talk about the New Orleans Pelicans, who, in my opinion, are the most underrated team heading into the offseason in terms of what they could accomplish. And that's because they're one of the only teams seeking a new point guard and a new center, while most other teams already set in those positions. And they've got a wing supposedly available in Brandon Ingram, who's got a lot of trade value and alone can accomplish a lot of their goals. I think this iteration of the core as we know it is about to change, especially because it's starting to get really expensive. And as far as who they're been linked to, I'm going to go over all of the guys: Trae Young, Darius Garland, Dejounte Murray, Jarrett Allen, Clint Capela, just to name a few. And because I think they've got the pieces to get one or multiple of these guys, and they've got a surplus of draft picks. So let's get into it. But before I get into it, please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's still a brand new channel and it'll help a lot. So you take a look at this Pelicans roster, pretty great collection of talent, just not the greatest fitting pieces altogether. A lot of it has to do with the Zion Williams and Brandon Ingram pairing, which a lot of people around the league speculated they're eventually going to have to split up. And it seems like the Pelicans are finally set on by potentially moving Brandon Ingram. But the biggest issue with this build and why I don't think running it completely back is viable is just how expensive it is at the top. You've got three guys making $33 million each, and it's already a pretty high payroll. They're already pretty close to the tax, and they've never paid the tax in franchise history. They don't want to exceed that $171.3 million level. I don't think they will this year. And really, that's enough money to get a new starting center, maybe re-sign Jonas Valanciunas for a player at his caliber. So you're not really improving at all. So that's why I get the feeling that they're gonna trade one of their highest paid players, maybe both, to reshuffle the roster, get that point guard that they're looking for, get that upgrade at center as well, and potentially give them more flexibility in the future to keep this new core and make it sustainable over the next few years. But before I get into those scenarios, I want to illustrate why this Pelicans team needs to change things up, starting with Brandon Ingram, because he's expiring this season and he's going to be extension eligible for up to 4 years, $208.5 million. And per multiple reports, the Pelicans are unlikely to offer him that. And a big reason for that is it's going to be very hard to fit that contract while also elevating Trey Murphy. He's going to be extension eligible as well, and he can get anywhere between 25, 30 million a year, maybe even more. He's going to have a lot of suitors if he hits restricted free agency. But as far as Ingram, I would imagine he is going to command the max, and if get max level offers. There's already the reports that the Sixers are interested in him if they strike out on some other targets. Check out my Sixers video. I get into that scenario. I think that one's very realistic. And if moved, I do envision a multi-team scenario because with all the big money moving around, I think it's going to take multiple teams to make it work. So let's jump a year ahead and pretend that the Pelicans did extend Brandon Ingram to his max and extended Trey Murphy starting at something around $25 million a year. They're already right at the tax and they don't even have a center. So it's just not practical to have all three of these guys making top dollar as well as Trey Murphy. They're going to have to part with at least one of Ingram or McCollum. Honestly, I think both because one, if you're promoting Trey Murphy, then you might as well move Ingram. But if you're bringing in a new starting point guard and Trey Murphy's now starting, plus you want a traditional center, you can't have CJ McCollum making $30 million plus off the bench. Now, the issue with McCollum is I'm not sure what teams really want him with his 2 years, $60+ million remaining. I was thinking maybe the Lakers if they lose D'Angelo Russell, maybe the Pistons because Trajan Langdon just went there. He was working with the Pelicans. Maybe he would have an interest in bringing him and his veteran leadership to help the team. But either way, going forward, I'm going to do projections for the current season, assuming they also traded CJ McCollum, because that would completely transform their payroll and structure going forward. All right, let's get into the scenario. So here's something I cooked up that involves the Pelicans getting back Dejounte Murray, Clint Capela, and they're sending out Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum. So let's say that there is no immediate salary relief type of trade for CJ McCollum, such as sending him to the Pistons into their cap space and not taking any salary back. So that means that they are taking salary back. So I made a trade where it involves the Lakers. Let's say they lose D'Angelo Russell. So they send out Gabe Vincent and Jared Vanderbilt for CJ McCollum. So the Pelicans are getting a couple of good role players back to come off the bench. And because they're taking salary back for McCollum, they're going to want a more affordable point guard option. So I got them taking back Dejounte Murray, who's got a trade bonus that would elevate his contract to just below $30 million. And they're getting an answer at center with Clint Capela. I don't know if the Pelicans would need to include any draft equity in this scenario for what they're getting back, but they have plenty of first round picks to spare. And then when you put it all together, they're able to field a full roster and still stay well below the luxury tax line. And they still have enough flexibility to bring in another guy. They could dip into their mid-level exception starting at just under 13 million, or even better, they could bring back Najee Marshall. I feel like that $9 million range should be a good starting point to bring him back. And that's huge if they could retain him. He's a guy that a lot of teams have penciled in to not return to the Pelicans because of their current payroll structure. Now here the Pelicans did the same exact trade, except it involves the Cavs, where they're taking in a more expensive upgrade at point guard in Darius Garland and a more talented upgrade at center in Jarrett Allen, someone that they've been heavily linked to. And I would imagine that the Pelicans sent out some draft equity to make this work. Now, because of Garland's extra money, they are much closer to the tax, which means they can't bring in another guy or re-sign Marshall. So if this were to happen, I would definitely even try to be more aggressive and see if I could salary dump CJ McCollum to a cap space team, just get off his money completely, or take back even less money than what they're taking back here for him. Maybe even send out some draft equity to convince a team to do it. Now, if they were trading for Trae Young, who is the most expensive option at point guard from the group at that $43 million amount, I would definitely try to structure it in a way where I'm not taking back any extra money for CJ McCollum. So here they're sending out Ingram and McCollum. They're taking back Trae Young and Clint Capela from the Hawks. And they finish well below the luxury tax line, and they're able to bring in another guy. So now I want to look ahead and show why this build is much more sustainable than their current build. So let's say they're able to successfully acquire Darius Garland and Jarrett Allen. I think I prefer that combo more than the other options listed. That it might not even be a viable option available for the Pelicans, but let's say they pull it off, and let's say they extend Trey Murphy to 5 years, roughly 145 million, could start as low as 25 million. Now you've got this new, reformed, and really much more optimized starting five. But the other thing is, because we removed CJ McCollum's contract completely, they now have the flexibility to have a deeper roster. I've got them re-signing Larry Nance. I put him with the same salary amount he's about to make this upcoming season. I've got Najee Marshall making around 10 million, and they're able to fill out the rest of the roster, get to 14 players, and still stay right below the tax. This is a type of build I would definitely try to go for if I'm the Pelicans. Might not be truly available, especially on the Cavs end of things, but if they were, I think the Pelicans, with the players they're sending out and the extra draft picks they have, I think they have enough stuff to get something like this done.